The WNBA just got exposed for the most corrupt officiating scandal in its history, and Caitlin Clark isn't staying silent anymore. What started as a simple basketball game between the Indiana Fever and LA Sparks turned into undeniable proof that certain refs might actually be betting against teams. And the evidence is so damning that even the league's biggest defenders can't explain it away. The final 1.9 seconds of that game took almost 5 full minutes to play. And what happened during those minutes had players, coaches, and even former WNBA stars calling for a full investigation into referee corruption. But before we dive into the shocking details that have everyone talking, make sure to hit that like button if you think the WNBA needs to clean house with these refs, and subscribe for more breaking coverage of what's really happening behind the scenes in women's basketball. The controversy exploded during what should have been a routine Indiana Fever victory over the LA Sparks, 76-75. With just 1.9 seconds left on the clock, the Fever had the game wrapped up. Kelsey Mitchell was at the free throw line, deliberately trying to miss her shot to run out the clock, a standard basketball strategy that every ref in the league knows. But then something unprecedented happened. The referee, whose name fans have now connected to multiple suspicious calls this season, allowed the Sparks to call a reset timeout with 0.4 seconds remaining. That's not just unusual, it's virtually unheard of in professional basketball. Caitlin Clark, watching from the sideline while nursing an injury, jumped up in disbelief. The cameras caught her pointing at the opposing team and clearly mouthing the words, "You gave them every chance to win." Her smile wasn't one of amusement, it was the kind of incredulous expression you make when something is so obviously wrong that you can't believe it's happening right in front of you. The slow-motion replay shows her shaking her head, turning to the bench, and saying something that lip readers have since decoded as "this is fucking rigged." Of course, the broadcast didn't pick up the audio, but the message was crystal clear. What happened next would shock everyone watching. Sydney Colson, the injured Fever guard watching from home with a torn ACL, immediately took to social media with a tweet that would go viral within minutes. At a certain point in the league's existence, I'm gonna need Kelsey Mitchell to get the same whistle as other stars. The way she gets assaulted is insane, actually. I've considered roping my sister in to have her office pursue charges. That last part wasn't entirely a joke. Colson's sister is actually a practicing attorney who specializes in assault cases, and the fact that a professional athlete is even considering legal action against the league's officiating tells you everything you need to know about how bad things have gotten. The specific play that triggered this explosion happened in the second quarter, and it's worth breaking down exactly what occurred because the video evidence is undeniable. Kelsey Mitchell drove hard to the basket, completely beating her defender off the dribble. As she went up for the layup, the Sparks defender didn't just contest the shot. She grabbed Mitchell's arm with both hands and yanked her sideways mid-air. The contact was so violent that Mitchell's entire body twisted unnaturally, and she barely managed to get the shot off. Somehow, miraculously, she still made the layup. But here's where it gets interesting. Not only was there no foul called, but when Lexi Hull stood up from the bench to test the obvious missed call, she was immediately hit with a technical foul for showing emotion. Think about that for a second. The player who committed assault on the court faced 0 consequences. The player who got assaulted got 0 protection. But the teammate who dared to stand up and point out the obvious, she got punished. If that's not evidence of corruption, then what exactly would corruption look like? This wasn't just bad officiating, this was targeted, deliberate, and systematic bias that anyone with functioning eyes could see. But that wasn't the whole story of what made this game so controversial. Throughout the entire 40 minutes, there was a clear pattern emerging. Every time a Fever player drove to the basket, they were getting hammered with no calls. Meanwhile, on the other end, Sparks players were getting phantom fouls called if a Fever defender so much as breathed on them. The free throw disparity was so lopsided that even neutral commentators started questioning what was happening. By the third quarter, fans in the arena were chanting, "Check his bets," every time this particular referee made a call, and security had to be increased around the officials' tunnel at halftime. Caitlin Clark's response to Sydney Colson's tweet added fuel to the fire. "Careful, you're going to get fined," she wrote, with a winking emoji that made it clear she was being sarcastic. Her sarcasm pointed to a very real problem. The WNBA has been systematically fining players who dare to criticize officiating, creating a culture of silence where corruption can thrive unchecked. Sophie Cunningham alone has been fined 3 separate times this season, losing over $2,000 just for pointing out obvious inconsistencies in how games are called. The first fine came when Cunningham lip-synced to a TikTok song that called referees stupid and useless. $500 gone, just like that. The second fine hit when she mentioned on her own podcast that certain players seem to get preferential treatment from officials. Another $1,500 vanished from her bank account. The third strike came when she dared to point out that rookie players were getting superstar calls, while established veterans like Mitchell were getting mauled with no protection. The message from the league office was clear: shut up and take it, or we'll keep hitting your wallet until you learn your lesson. What happened next would reveal just how deep this problem goes. Lynn Dunn, the Fever's general manager and a respected figure in women's basketball for over 30 years, publicly stated she would help pay any fines that her players received for speaking the truth about officiating. Think about what that means. A team executive is essentially saying she's willing to fund a rebellion against the league's corruption because the situation has gotten so out of hand that normal channels of complaint have completely failed. The statistical evidence backs up what everyone saw with their eyes. In the last 10 games involving this particular referee, the team he appears to favor based on his calls has covered the spread 9 times. That's a 90% success rate that would make any sports bettor suspicious. When you combine that with the fact that several suspicious betting patterns have been flagged by monitoring services on games he's officiated, you start to see a picture that the WNBA desperately doesn't want anyone talking about. Former WNBA players have started speaking out too, breaking their usual code of silence. One retired All-Star, who asked to remain anonymous to protect her broadcasting career, revealed that players have been complaining about this specific referee for years. Everyone knows which refs you can trust and which ones have agendas, he said. This guy, he's in a category all his own. Players literally change their game plans when they see he's officiating because they know certain calls are predetermined. The league's response to all this controversy has been predictably tone-deaf. Instead of investigating the concerns or even acknowledging that there might be a problem, they've doubled down on finding players who speak out. Just last week, another player received a $1,000 fine for liking a tweet that criticized officiating. They're not just punishing direct criticism anymore, they're going after anyone who even acknowledges that criticism exists. But here's where the story takes an even darker. Sources close to the situation have revealed that multiple players have been approached by individuals claiming to represent gambling syndicates, asking for inside information about injuries, team dynamics, and game strategy. While no current players have admitted to cooperating with these approaches, the fact that they're happening at all suggests that gambling interests have identified the WNBA as a vulnerable target for manipulation. The timing of this scandal couldn't be worse for the league. Viewership is at an all-time high, thanks to stars like Caitlin Clark bringing unprecedented attention to women's basketball. Attendance records are being broken, merchandise sales are through the roof, and major sponsors are finally taking the WNBA seriously as a marketing platform. But all of that progress is being undermined by officiating that looks more like professional wrestling than professional basketball. What makes this situation even more frustrating is that the solutions are obvious. The NBA has implemented sophisticated monitoring systems to track referee performance and identify statistical anomalies that might indicate bias or corruption. They use multiple review officials, employ former FBI agents to investigate suspicious patterns, and maintain strict separation between referees and gambling interests. The WNBA could implement these same protections tomorrow if they wanted. They seem more interested in protecting the refs than protecting the integrity of the game. The players have had enough, and they're starting to organize. There's talk of a formal petition to the Players Association demanding independent oversight of officiating. Some teams are reportedly considering boycotting media obligations until the league addresses these concerns. And perhaps most significantly, several prominent players have begun keeping detailed logs of missed calls and suspicious patterns, building a case that will be impossible for the league to ignore. Caitlin Clark's influence in this fight cannot be overstated. As the league's most marketable star and biggest draw, her voice carries weight that even Commissioner Kathy Engelbert ignore. When Clark speaks, millions of fans listen, and her willingness to call out corruption, even through sarcastic tweets, has emboldened other players to break their silence. She's essentially daring the league to fine her, knowing that punishing their golden goose would be a public relations disaster. The Fever organization has also started pushing back in subtle but significant ways. They've begun posting slow-motion replays of missed calls on their social media accounts, letting the evidence speak for itself. They've hired additional video analysts to document officiating patterns. And most importantly, they've made it clear that they'll support any player who faces retaliation for speaking the truth. What really exposes the depth of this problem is comparing how different players are officiated. When certain rookie players drive to the basket, they get calls if there's any contact at all, sometimes even when the contact is initiated by them. But when Kelsey Mitchell or other Fever guards attack the rim, they can get clotheslined and the refs suddenly develop selective blindness. This isn't just inconsistent, it's clear favoritism that affects game outcomes and potentially gambling results. The financial implications of this scandal are staggering. If it's proven that referees have been influencing games for gambling purposes, the WNBA could face lawsuits from teams, players, sponsors, and even fans who bought tickets expecting to see legitimate competition. The league's reputation, already fragile as it fights for mainstream acceptance, could be permanently damaged. Major sponsors might pull out, TV deals could be canceled, and the progress women's basketball has made could be set back by decades. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of this scandal is what it says about the league's priority. By protecting corrupt officials and punishing players who speak out, the WNBA is sending a clear message. Maintaining the status quo is more important than fairness, integrity, or the growth of the game. They're essentially telling players to shut up and dribble while the refs do whatever they want. And that's a message that's resonating with fans in all the wrong ways. The question now is what happens next? Will the league continue to bury its head in the sand, hoping this controversy blows over? Will they finally acknowledge the problem and take meaningful action? Or will this scandal continue to escalate until it explodes into something that can't be ignored? Based on the league's track record, smart money would bet on continued denial and deflection. But with players like Caitlin Clark and Colson refusing to stay silent, this story is far from over. If you think it's time for the WNBA to clean up its officiating and investigate these corruption allegations, drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell because we'll be following this story as it develops. And trust me, based on what our sources are telling us, the revelations that are coming will make this look like just the tip of the iceberg. The truth about what's really happening in the WNBA is about to come out. And when it does, some very powerful people are going to have a lot of explaining to do.